serve. Because he was all over the world, and he made comments on the people and the places, and when he hit the Philippines, it just clicked for him. And he wrote about how he felt about the people he met there. He wrote every day, and sometimes more than once a day. And she kept them all. It was amazing. It started out, Mom was the go-between between Dad and Lorraine. And he would write and say, Doris, have you seen Lorraine? I haven't had a letter from her in weeks. What's going on? Has she said anything about me? It seemed kind of like high school. And then I realized she was only 16. And he was maybe 19, maybe 20. And then he went on leave, and the next letters were, forget Lorraine. Now, he was writing to Mom, and it was pretty amazing. There was some themes that ran throughout his letters. This was 1945 and 1946. And those themes have been consistent throughout his life. Some were mundane and some were not. Like the moon. Dad loved the moon. You learn all these things about your parent when you read through their love letters, I guess. He was always writing about, I wish Doris was here looking at the moon with me. And then he loved waffles. To the day he died, he loved waffles. He would tell us, he was at Flagstone, he'd say, they served waffles today. Back in 1945, he talked about how much he loved waffles for breakfast. He loved God. That was very obvious. He talked to Mom a lot about that. What impressed me most, he loved Mom. He really, really loved Mom. And that never changed. It never changed, That is an amazing example for us of the love he had for the 66 years they were married, and even after he lost her, how much he loved Mom. And for us, our family, for the 6 of us, losing Dad made us lose Mom all over. That she always seemed like she was with us as long as we had Dad. But when Dad passed, we lost Mom again. And it was like the end of the last chapter of an amazing love story. That is an example to all of us. And having Dan and Jermaine's daughter got married yesterday, and it was so great to see the love they have. And I hope that we can all have that love that Mom and Dad had. It was amazing. And we miss them. Thank you. I hope somebody else has a story.
On that happy note, hi, I'm Evelyn, one of his great-grandchildren. I honestly, just gonna be honest here, I don't really have very many memories from great-grandpa, and most of the younger ones being of him being like, there's a hole in your shirt, just before he tickled me. But most of my memories have come from the recent years, where he could come down, or I guess up to Alaska, and give a little hello. Like when he came up to show us, when he went to the World War II memorial, it was great. He showed us a video, and he did the same thing that he apparently likes to do every time. He went, how old are you? I went, 14. 14? You're so big! Well, I was 13 last year when you saw me. But the point of that being, every time I saw him, always smile. It didn't even have to be because of me. Of course it's not. He always just smiled and seemed happy. He kept up this cheerful attitude until the end, and I really think that helped everyone, and it will always remain in our memories of him with that smile.
Paul and Nancy Kelly from Toke. Just a little bit to share. One thing you were talking about, when you hear Wayne, you always heard Doris. They were always together. Very, very special to know that. We first met Wayne and Doris when they moved to Toke, I guess in the late 70s, early 80s, and pardon? 77, and got to know them and the boys very well. He always called me little brother. I do remember that. And we also got a call, David, one night. I don't remember that he told us, "You are going." I think he asked, "Do you want to go to Japan?" And as I remember, I didn't even ask you, did I? I just said, "Yes, we're going." And we went, and it really was a very, very special time in our life. And Rebecca talked about them being hosts. And when we were here before, for your mom's celebration, I should have, and I forgot to ask, a raise of hands of people who have sat at their table and dined with them. Can you look around the room? It would have been easier to say people who did not. We've stayed with them in Haynes Junction. They came in when we were working up a boundary. We came in our house one night. We were gone. They were sleeping in our bed, and we had a large dog that charged into the bedroom and on top of them. And that must have been maybe 1979 is what I would think. Very special memories for them, of them. And I say them, I know we're here for Wayne, but I really think of both of them. And when we were here before, I remembered saying that your mother was a saint because she put up with all his corny jokes. Remember that? And this is a joke that he must have told me 30 or 40 years ago, and it's seared. That's all I can truly say. It's seared in my head, and it's still there. And until I go to be with the Lord, until I can no longer remember, it will be there. There was an automobile company in Japan that they were building a new automobile. And this one man was tasked with coming up with the name of the new automobile. And they went through the process, and they would call this guy and say, "Well, do you have the name yet? It's going to be a year." And no, not yet. And it continued on and on, calling the guy, and he would never have the answer. And the day before, they called the man and said, "We have to have the name for tomorrow." And he said, "Tatsu." I could not get rid of that if I tried.
I first met Wayne and Doris when they came to Washington State back in the 80s. And I was going to church with Mark's parents, my husband Mark's parents. And that Mark was still in Texas at that time. And most Sundays, I would go to lunch at Mark's parents', and so I got to meet this couple that was supposed to be their neighbors up in Alaska, and they were Wayne and Doris Eames. I didn't know. Well, then Mark comes home from Texas, and we start dating, we get together, and then jump forward to 2001, and we moved back up here, and we're living in the home that Mark grew up in, which is on the property in which they gave Wayne and Doris to build their cabin. And we went over for dinner, not real often, but probably more than most, because we were right there, and I was new to the Alaska life. I didn't know how to cook this moose and caribou and these things, and so Doris, she was my mama away from home. My mother's name was Doris as well. And she just kind of took me under her wing. And she said, I have to put up with my husband. Because the first time we walked in the door, he started joking and teasing me, like, you know, because I was part of the family. I wasn't sure I was part of the family, but he welcomed me that way. I was part of the Hooper family, so I was part of his family. And yes, he had his strange little jokes. One year, we'd been here, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. He brings over, and I was going to bring this tonight, and I forgot. He brings over, and he sets this little shelter that he had made, that he had glued these 2 little tacks under. And I'm looking, what in the world is that? And it has Mark's name on one side of the roof of this thing, and my name on the other, and I'm looking, and he says, don't you know what it is? And I don't know. What are these things? Because I didn't know what they were at first. A couple of days later, he says, well, have you figured it out yet? And I said, well, I didn't, but Mark did. It's a tax shelter.
Yeah. I just have to share, but I think I have a lot enough voice that I can hear myself walking up there because I have to use a cane and I might fall off again. Anyway, I loved Doris and Wayne. Doris was probably one of my most dearest friends. I just was at a funeral a couple weeks ago for Ina Lincoln, and Ina Lincoln was a very dear friend of mine too. And Wayne was so much different than Doris. Doris was such a sweet and loving person, and she'd always say, how are you feeling, Jenny? She'd always worry about me. And I said, Doris, you're the one that have all these health problems. I said, how are you doing? And anyway, we just really were the best of friends. I just loved her so much. And of course, I put up with Wayne too. And he just always teasing me. That was one of his favorite things to do, I think, was tease Jenny. Anyway, I just feel, I was terribly in pain yesterday, and I thought, oh no, Lord, I gotta go to at least the memorial service for Wayne, because on top of Doris, Wayne was very special to me too. And we learned a lot when Wayne and Doris was here. In fact, I think our whole family became Christians from the people that were at Penny Lake Chapel. Starting with Joe Virgin, some of the kids did. And anyway, but Wayne was really special, and of course Doris was very special. And I have 3 very, very special friends. Ina Lincoln was one of them that she was such a beautiful person, and I loved her so much. And it amazed me because she made me an honorary pallbearer at the funeral. And I thought that was the most wonderful thing in the world, that she thought that we were that good of friends that she named me the honorary pallbearer. And anyway, it just humbled me, I'm sure. But it was a beautiful funeral and everything. But Wayne was a lot of fun, and he really preached the word. And I think a lot of people came to know the Lord when they were here from Penny Lake. And I hated to see them leave, but that we would still remain friends to the very end until they moved down. Even after they moved down to, Washington, they would come back once in a while, and it was so wonderful to see them again. And so they're just such dear friends of mine, wonderful, wonderful memories. I could go on for hours, but I know that, other people might want to say a word or two too, so I just wanted to share how much I love them and how special, especially Doris, was to me and Wayne too. So at least Wayne is with his sweetheart, again, and that's so wonderful because he always said, I'm just waiting to be with my sweetheart. And they were so sweet together. So anyway, thank you.
Now, Judy killed the ace there. I have to relay a story about that. We talked about it at the graveside service in the murder, but after Mom passed away, we told Dad, Dad, Jenny Helkins single. I don't know if I'm getting out of line here or not, or if anyone knew this, but Dad admitted to me that he actually took Jenny out on a date. I think my siblings didn't even know that. He told me. But after the date, I said, well, how did it go with Jenny? He goes, well, we had a nice dinner. He said, but you know what? She has way too many children, way too many grandchildren, way too many grandchildren. You know what Christmas would be like with her? Dad had called me several times in the past few years. Well, actually, he wouldn't call me because he couldn't hear, but he would send me an email and ask me to call him back. But as like somebody mentioned earlier, our daughter Michelle got married just yesterday in Valdez, and Dad had wanted so much to do the ceremony. About a year and a half ago, he called me. He told me, he says, I'm going to be coming to the wedding, God willing, but he says, I'm not able to do the ceremony anymore. He said, God willing, I'll be at the ceremony, but as we all know, that didn't happen. So, anyway, everything went off, and well, as my daughter was up on the stage getting married, that was one of the biggest stories in my mind was that Dad had wanted to be there so much for that.
In 1978, I had given birth to a little baby boy called Gustav. And Dwayne King had a lady out in the car that he wanted me to meet, and that was Doris. And then in 1979, Doris and Wayne came out to Liberty Creek. And I thought of it being the first white people to ever come visit us. Nobody ever went to Liberty Creek, 25 miles southeast of Boundary. And they brought the Send Mission, what was it called? Ranger, and Dennis, and Danny, and Wayne, and Doris, and they built a table. And it was our first picnic table, and we had a blast, and they left. And we heard the horror story. Ranger broke down. Doris did great. Danny, Dennis, and Wayne had blisters. We had to walk out. And Wayne gave us the nickname for our son Gustav. He called him Dusty Britches. And that became his handle for caribou platters. And Wayne stood up for us at the wedding in Toke. And Wayne and Doris were like the The Spirit, when the Lord says that He gives us mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers, He gave us a mother and father. And I remember the day Oli was trying to explain something and Wayne was trying to help, and finally he said, Oli, put the cookies on the lower shelf for Helen.
Anybody else? Just one small example of Wayne and Doris's enormous hospitality gift. I visited them, it might have been in the year 2006, down in Lower 48. They showed me where to sleep. There's a nice, really nice little room there. A bed, it was pretty high up. Nice bed to sleep in. And I don't remember just how long into the visit I realized, and I think I have this correct, that they gave me, for the place to sleep, their bedroom and their bed, and they were sleeping out in the living room. How is that for hospitality?
Doris managed, ran, whatever the women. Doris managed or ran or planned or worked at all the women's retreats that were in total for years. She started the day after one, planning, saving, freezing soup stocks and vegetable pieces to make soup for 120 ladies a year later. And Doris, slow down, take a break before. You did not make Doris slow down. Anybody happy not making Doris slow down to take a break? Did not happen. But she loved it. They were her idea to minister to women in the bush, to come together once a year. And we had wonderful times. We got to know one another. Many of us, we only saw each other once a year at those retreats. And like I said, they were her brainchild and her baby, and we all benefited greatly.
Yeah. You guys
I'm Tricia, or a lot of you knew me as Patty. Anyway, at the very end of Dad's life, I went and spent about 6 weeks helping to take care of him. And I saw a very different side of him. Growing up, he was, sorry, I had to write this, I had it written down here. Growing up, he was the one in the house that always handed out the discipline. He was also the one who also preached a lot, and that was not always from the pulpit that he preached. Anyway, during that 6 weeks, I saw this completely different side of him. I saw all of these cards and letters that all of you and people all over the world wrote to him, telling and saying how much he had influenced their lives. And it was just such a blessing to me to hear about this part of my dad that I didn't know about. So I wanted to say thank you for everybody that was his friend.
Thanks. I'll be very brief. Many of you knew Wayne a lot longer than I did when we got married, but I tried to think back and just think about my relationship with Wayne, what it meant, and then try to think of one word. And to be honest, the word I came up with is not something you might have heard before, but really I think that of Wayne as a man of great clarity. Clarity. He's very clear. If you met Wayne or you knew Wayne, you knew exactly where he stood on things and who he was. He didn't sugarcoat it. Many of us can be kind of, up and down and go with the flow, but Wayne had a faith that was so real that his life was very clear to everyone around him. And I remember when we met for the first time, it was already after his daughter and I were engaged. And we were living in Hawaii. We flew to Anchorage to get married. And that's when I actually first met him. He was doing our wedding. And he took me aside in a room and sat me down and looked down and said, "Okay, Vic, I want to be clear about one thing." He goes, "I have a no return policy on my daughter." I just want to make it clear to you that when you marry her, it's for life. You're You're not bringing her back to me. So it was great, and he was very honest about that, and I came to love him. We talked a lot about a lot of things. And I think of it, another reason of clarity that comes to mind is because several years ago, Tricia and I moved to Calcutta, India for 3 years. And when Wayne found out we were moving there,